Welcome to the stream, everybody. Happy Sunday afternoon to you. We're going to answer questions about FPV. Answer your questions. We're going to talk. We're going to chat. Let me just fill you guys in on what I've been up to. As you know, I had a little adventure last week. Yeah. What? Video will be coming out on my channel. This is some of the content I shot for the video. Getting strapped in.
Okay.
I don't know which of these clips is any good. This obviously is not me driving. I'm the camera guy here. But I did drive that car. Listen to those carbon ceramic brakes. Woo! Oh my gosh. It was a hoot. It was a hoot. It was a blast. Got to drive this one. This is just B-roll. Lamborghini Huracan. Yeah. This was the sleeper of the day. The AMG GT drives it. You'd think it would be like a good-looking car, but not like on the level of like the Lambos and the Ferraris. That's a hell of a car. I'm super impressed with it. That's the one. That's in my price range. These other things are unachievable, but yeah, no.
How do you? What's that?
Oh, that's not that one. Not that one. Porsche 992 GT3. Yeah. Anyway, had a good old time driving cars and going around the racetrack. And by the time it was done, I was like, no, I was just starting to get good. Of course, I wasn't like, okay, here's the thing. Hang on, here we go. All right, there we go. This is from the 9 a.m. session. I am in second position, fastest lap. Jason is in third position. And so, okay, in the 9 a.m. session, we were number 2 and 3. That's pretty respectable. And also I learned that 57 seconds when the instructors take you out for a ride-along lap, they don't want the instructors going balls to the wall and crashing the cars. So there's a rule that the instructors can't go faster than 57 seconds. That's like the fastest you can go on safely. And I got two out of my 45 laps were 57 seconds. So, it was good. It was good. It was good. This was my first time taking a car onto a racetrack, and I loved it. I loved it. The instructors were great. I don't know how achievable going to this. I'll give a little plug for the place, then we'll get started with the real stream. I don't know how achievable, because this was, so for those who didn't catch, this was my wife's 20th anniversary present to me. So not something I'm going to be, well, realistically, I don't know when I'll ever do this again, but if you, the place is called Exotics Racing. It used to be called Speed Vegas. If you're in Vegas and you want to drop $500 on a sort of a peak experience, the instructors were amazing. You'll hear it in the video. Like, they don't just give you the car and say, have fun. They, like, try to teach you how to drive the track and how to actually be a better driver. And so the whole time you're in the car, the instructor's like, braking, okay, off brake, okay, out to the green cone, turn in, faster, faster. And they're pushing you. They're like, faster, faster, get on the gas. At one point, the instructor reached over and put his hand on my knee because I was lifting too early, and he literally just held my knee down so I would not lift from the gas, so I would go faster. It was great. Anyway, highly recommend. Had a great time. Look for the video on the channel. Before we move on, Blunty, did anybody ask questions about this that I should focus on before we move on? I saw somebody asking about the GT3. I went there in 2012, drove a Nissan GTR. Yeah, the GTR just didn't quite make the cut in terms of, that's a cool car though, for sure. Is iRacing in your future? It's tempting. It's tempting, although frankly, I think before I spend $10,000 on an iRacing rig, which I hear that's what they go for, I might spend something on like a used Miata and go autocross it. I don't know. The iRacing's tempting, but like actually being in the car, feeling the G-forces, it was insane. You just can't substitute that. So I don't know. Mupshot says, I assume all those cars are nerfed a little bit. Well, here's what they do. There's two things they do, Mupshot. One is that the cars obviously all have like traction control and stuff. And so the instructor would set the traction control to don't let this guy kill us. And then as you're racing or driving, he would reach over and turn the knob. If you were doing good, he'd turn the traction control down a little bit to give you a little bit more control, right? And then the other is that on the instructors, on the passenger side of the vehicle, there is a great big brake lever. And the instructor can hit the brakes at any time and like stop the car. So like there was one time off the front straight, you're doing 130 miles an hour off the front straight, and then you hit the braking zone and the instructor's like on the brakes. And I have no perspective on exactly, because like you don't always exactly start braking right at the first cone. Sometimes it's depending on how the car is. Anyway, so I'm like just on the gas, full throttle, 130 miles an hour down the front straight, waiting for the instructor to tell me to brake, right? So I can like try to do it right. And at one time, I don't know if I was fixated or if I just didn't hear him. I didn't hear him say brake, and I'm just like, I'm waiting for you, buddy. And I'm just gonna full throttle at 130 miles an hour into the corner, and I feel the car start slowing down, and he's going, brake! And I'm like, oh, I should have been braking. So that's what they do. Anyway. Okay. Anyway, we'll hear more about that when I release the video. Let's get on with the questions. About drones. That's what we're here for. We're here to talk about drones. You guys are going to ask questions. Thank you, patrons in the Discord. Thank you, guys. For your support. We'll be paying extra attention to the Discord. And, of course, if you want to hit the $sign and leave a super chat, would love you. Blunty, I'm going to change the poll. What is your favorite way to ask JB a question during live stream? Leave a super chat? Pleb chat, YouTube chat, Discord. Thank you, patrons. Okay, we're going to start that poll. We're pandering. Okay. Let's get some questions. Why does one of my drone motors fail most of the time when I do a flip? Here is video. So let's take a look at the video. Sure, but I think I know what we're going to see. I have a sense of what we're probably going to see. And I'll show you how I approach this. Okay. So this is what we'll call a death roll. A death roll is where one motor stops making thrust. It basically stops, and then the quad, and it's called a death roll because once it starts, you seldom recover. What I like to look for in the death roll is which of the 4 motors dropped out. Okay? Which of the 4 motors dropped out? And you can tell that because the quad will tilt down and back, forward and back, right? It'll tilt toward the motor that stopped making thrust. So if we look here, let's just play it at like half speed. We roll. Okay, so first of all, you said a flip, but that's a roll. Nitpicking. We roll, and that. It's going to the right and back. It's going back and to the right. Okay? So what happens is that when you do a right roll, the right motors go to 0 and the left motors go to full. You roll, and then the back right motor gave out. So sometimes the reason for that is that your idle speed is too low. When the right motor goes to 0 during the flip, if the idle speed is too low, it will stall and it won't be able to speed back up again. That's probably not it, though. Sorry, it's my washers yelling at me. I was like, what's that sound? That's probably not what it is because that's just usually not what it is. The default idle speed is good enough for most things. But what we do know from this is your back right motor is the problem. Now, if you do a left flip, does the same thing happen to the left? Or is it fine when you do a left flip, but it's always the right motor? So we would want to try and narrow this down. We would want to do a right flip. Does it always fall out when I do a right flip? What if I do a front flip? What if I do a left roll? What if I do a back flip? And we would want to analyze each of those scenarios to see if it always points to the back right motor as the problem. Now, if it always points to the back right motor as the problem, then it's either that motor or that ESC. And basically the only way to determine that is to swap the motor, and then if it keeps happening, it's the ESC. But if it's kind of random, like if sometimes it rolls to the left, sometimes it rolls to the right, sometimes it rolls to the front, that's not a bad motor. That's possibly the ESC, possibly the flight controller settings. So that helps you narrow it down. That's about the best advice I can give you. Noob asks, I have the Happy Model EP1 2.4 receiver and a TX16S, and I can't get telemetry data. Is there a way to get SATs locked to show on the radio? Yeah, absolutely. What you need to do is go into the radio's telemetry screen and discover new sensors. So you go hit the model key, page to the telemetry screen. In that menu, there's an option, discover new sensors. The quadcopter has to be powered up. If you do discover new sensors and you only see RSSI, LQ, etc., those sensors, RSSI, LQ, they come from the receiver. So you will get those sensors whenever the receiver is bound. The other sensors come through the receiver from the flight controller. So if you're getting the receiver sensors, Jesus fucking Christ. Thank you, Plenty. If you're going to spam the chat, make sure to spam the chat with lots of annoying emojis to make it extra annoying. Apologize for the swear. I don't apologize for taking the Lord's name in vain. I'll just do that. I just feel like it was an exceptionally powerful swear for the actual offense being committed. And so for using too strong of a swear, I apologize. So if you're not getting the flight controller-based telemetry, make sure that you have telemetry enabled in the receiver tab. That will cause that. So those are some things to check. Voxel is going to leave soon and wants to make sure their question gets answered. Okay, Voxel, I got you. I want to get into wings. I want to do the type of long range you can't do with quads. Everyone says the Mojito is too advanced. I think that's probably right. I think the Mojito is... Now, obviously, I haven't flown a Mojito, and I'm not a wing guy. So I have flown wings, but... my impression is that the Mojito is a performance wing that is not a beginner trainer. And that was also true for the Caipirinha, the previous sort of leading TBS wing. Again, I'm not enough of a wing guy to judge, and I never flew the Caipirinha. But people were like, I built a Caipirinha, and I crashed it on launch. And people were like, yeah, it's not a beginner wing. You need to really know what you're doing in order to successfully fly the Caipirinha. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Mojito was the same. As far as which one to get, Voxel, if you're looking to get into wings, I can recommend the He-Wing Ranger T1, which, in addition to personally having built and flown it and thinking it's a pretty good platform, also, it's just really popular. He-Wing Ranger T1. I got to tell you, the He-Wing Ranger T2 is the bigger. It's like it's like a 3-foot wingspan, roughly. I don't know how big it is. It's bigger, but it's actually a better trainer because it flies slower and has more lift if you have the room to fly it. The T2 is going to be too big to take on hikes, though. A little sub-250 wing like the Goblin, also a great choice. Very durable, but the little sub-250 wings fly really fast and may not be what you're looking for if you're trying to do long range. So... those are some thoughts about that, but I'm not like a super wing guy, so I'm really not the guy to ask. So,
can we answer the first question on the queue, and then can we make a live stream clip out of it?
Yeah, sure, can do. Louis Legaretta says, after flashing the ESCs on my SpeedyBF 405, the motors no longer spin when using Betaflight. They sort of budge and immediately stop. Any recommendations?
Yeah, so you flashed Blue Jay 0.21, which is the newest Blue Jay. I'm sure that's what happened. Blue Jay, for the last few months, 6 months, 8 months, something like that, the latest version has had toned down motor power on 1S and 2S drones.
I have heard about this.
There's a list of specific ESCs, but really the best way to handle this is just up by 10 or 20 on both the startup and startup and ramp up, I think is what they're called, the startup and ramp up power, the two power sliders that you have in Blue Jay. You want to bump those up by 10 or 20, save, and then start and try to spin it again. Bump them up by 10 or 20, save, start, try to spin them again, etc. And then do that until that stuttering stops happening, basically. It's because they're trying to be safer, but that means that the startup powers are going to be too low for some motors to spin. But what it should mean is that if you do this correctly, then your motor shouldn't burn out when you try to do things like turtle or get stuck on a brand.
Yeah. Yeah, so having startup power too high makes you much more likely to smoke the motors if you're trying to turtle and the motor is jammed. Or if you hit a branch and get stuck in a tree but don't disarm quickly. Well, no, that's startup power. Never mind, I take that back. It's really turtling or trying to arm when the motors are blocked. If the startup power is too high, you'll smoke the motors. And I don't know if it's somebody... I'm not going to look it up. I was in a chat with somebody, and he was like, here's Oscar Leong's recommendation for configuring BLHeli ESCs. And I don't want to attribute this to Oscar Leong. I think that's where it came from. Maybe it was somebody else. But he was like, yeah, set startup power to 100%. I was like, whoa. Yeah, okay. But you're going to massively increase the odds that you smoke your motors. So good to know. Great live stream clip. If you've got Blue Jay, what did it start, Plenty? 021? Specifically, or was it on earlier versions as well? Yeah,
specifically 021. This change was made, and yeah, it's a min and max startup power.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll raise that. Just raise that up until the motors start cleanly. Okay.
Yeah, basically the upside is that you're getting them to spin. The downside is you can burn them if they're too high. That's why you only want to bump them up by like 10 or 20. Like you could go 40 or 80 or find the spot if you want to do that.
Yeah.
But the goal is just not going too high. Also, though, if you go too low, maybe you have a startup problem in air. So like maybe 10 or 20 over where you get that stutter.
Well, the startup problem. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the startup problem shouldn't happen when you're in the air because the way the ESC starts spinning. So when the motor is not spinning, then the ESC doesn't have any feedback to know what the position of the magnets on the bell are. And so what it basically does is it just kicks the bell. It just sends a pulse of electricity through the motors and tries to get the bell to start moving at all. And then once the bell is moving, there's back EMF that tells it where the magnets are, and it can begin the actual commutation process. And that's why when the motors start, sometimes they'll go whoosh, 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 whoosh. It's trying to sort of kickstart it, kind of like turning over a kickstarted motorcycle engine. You're waiting for it to catch. But then once the motor is spinning, now
like if it stalls, like for instance, if you don't have dynamic idle set up and you got like backspin on the prop or something.
That's fair. I could see that.
I don't know
except
enough
I
about
don't think it. I think that most of the time when that happens, the motor doesn't literally stop. I could be wrong. I think it is still, I don't know. I could be wrong. If it stops, then yeah, you're 100% right. But at that point, you're falling out of the air and it's probably not going to start again. Right. I would think. I would think once it stalls, it might try to start it again, but it's not going to start it. But then will it smoke it? I don't know. That's a good point. Fair enough. Always good at arguing technical stuff with Blunty. I feel like I always learn stuff.
Yeah, we kept it, just so everybody knows, we didn't, like, when we're in the middle of a clip, we typically don't address we dropped out, just because if it's a short dropout, it'll be in the middle of the clip, and then I had to cut that out. So that's why I didn't bring it up to JP. Oh. Yeah, just for a minute, but it looks like we're back.
Weird. I don't show any dropped frames. Let's see, it must be a YouTube thing. Yeah, fucking YouTube. Yep. Jeez. Oh, man, I'm swearing a lot today. I don't know why. There's no reason to...
The cars got you all...
I'm all hyped up from racing the cars. Did you see my lap? Did you watch my lap?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was proud of myself, but then I also saw all the places where I was like, I could have done that faster. Why was I not on the gas there? Except in real life, like, you're trying not to crash a $300,000 supercar. So, like, I was like, I feel like I could go faster here, but I don't want to be a dumbass. And I could also see the traction control light on the dash and the peripheral vision. And so he'd be like, okay, go, go, go. And I'd get on the gas and the traction control light would go, ba, 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 ba. And I'm like, I would be dying right now. Go ahead, Blunty. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say it probably parallels quite well the drone simulator versus real life, right? You don't want to slam your drone into a wall every time you're trying to cut that corner really quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Except you're not in the drone, but yeah.
I wasn't scared for my own safety. I felt like no matter, like, unless I was just like, the instructor has a brake. He's not going to let you could maybe spin the car if you were a real bonehead, but he's not going to let you, like, put it into the wall at 100 miles an hour because he doesn't want to die either. I just didn't want to embarrass myself. That was my concern. Anyway. Let's see here. Kevin Knudsen asks, I've been flying a lot of tiny whoops with a first-gen pair of Fat Shark goggles. Should I go for the DJI goggles with analog mod? No. The V2, if you are trying, what are you trying to do? I would just keep flying. If you're, are you trying to go digital? Just keep flying your analog goggles on your analog drones. They're fine. Like, if you want upgraded analog goggles, get a set of SkyZone 040s or something like that, or 04Xs. Get a set of analog goggles. The V2 DJI goggles with the analog mod is a bad choice these days. And if you fly it and you love it, like, it's not the worst choice you could make, but here's why I say it's a bad choice. The V2 goggles are on the way out for DJI. V2 goggles don't support the 04 Air unit. That is DJI's signal to you that that's it. You're cut off. You can still fly 03s and Vistas. They still exist in the world and will be available on the used market for a long time. It's not like you're just stop existing, but I wouldn't encourage you to buy today unless you just get an incredible discount. But even if you get an incredible discount on the goggles, the air units will only get more and more rare. So the price in the air units is only going to go up as they get more and more rare as DJI stops making them. So you're really just putting yourself in a weird situation. And as far as analog goggles go, if you already own the V2 DJI goggles and you feel like putting analog on it, you can, but they're not great as analog goggles. So you're really buying a goggle that is not great as a digital goggle because it's end of life and not great as an analog goggle. I wouldn't do it. Keep flying your Fat Sharks. If you want a better analog goggle, buy a set of Sky Zones. If you want to go DJI, get like the N3 or the G3 and just whole hog into the DJI realm. That's my advice. Okay. Let's take some super chats. We've only got 2 super chats. Mike Bundy says, best whoop AIO. The best whoop AIO is the HD0 whoop AIO. Why is that? Because HD0 is the best video system for whoops. Now, analog is fine. There are reasons why people would prefer analog over HD0. But if you ask what's the best, obviously HD0 is the best for whoops. It's lightweight, good quality image, better than analog, not as good as DJI, not as lightweight as analog, almost as lightweight as analog, definitely lighter than DJI by a small amount. Great latency because whoops are often used for racing. I think that you have to give the throne to the HD0 AIO 5.
Is that one 1S only, or is 2S?
Good question. Power supply, yeah, 1S battery only. So, like, if you had a 2S whoop, it's no good, huh? That's interesting.
I think X12 is the one.
Is that the one? Yeah, I'm not sure. Is that like the good one? Now here's Happy Models X12 AIO. This one is very compelling for analog. Supports 1 to 2S. Built-in 12 amp ESC. That's very capable. 12 amps will get you all the way up to a 3-inch toothpick. Of course, it only supports 1 to 2S. A lot of people would do 3S on a 3-inch toothpick, but be that as it may. Built-in open VTX video transmitter. I believe up to 400 milliwatts. I believe up to 400 milliwatts. I'm not sure. That's very compelling.
Yeah, there's also an X12. Yeah, it's 400 milliwatts, and there's also an X12 Lite that is an option if you don't want the VTX.
So you could use the Happy Model X12 Lite with an external VTX if you wanted to. Yeah. Yes. So those would be the direction I'd go. And then obviously, well, that's not an all-in-one. That's just a video transmitter. So I was going to say the DJI, you asked about all-in-ones. So I was thinking about video transmitters. Those are the 2, 3 ones that I would point you towards. Chat is the chat saying, no, that's a terrible choice. You should have picked the blah, 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 blah. Okay, apparently not.
A couple of people saying the Matrix AIO.
Well, yeah, that's the one to get if you have the 04, because it has the 5-volt regulator for the 04. Is it 5-in-1? Does it have the VTX? It does. Oh my God, I didn't realize they had. Is there a version of this without the VTX so you can run the 04? There must be, right? Oh, that's a good one. 5-in-1. So I wish they would stop calling soldering welding. It's a translation issue, and they've done that for a decade. Yeah. Is there a version of this that doesn't have the VTX? 5-in-1. Here's the 1S version, 3-in-1, 4-in-1. Does that also have the 5-volt regulator for DJI? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it does. Okay, so this would be the one you get if you wanted to use the 04. Okay, great. But it's 1S only, whereas the other one no, the other one's 1S only. Okay, great. It's comparable. Awesome. Coelho FPV asks, thank you for $10, Coelho FPV. Betaflight 451 works great on the H743 Matek. On a Mamba H743 Mark IV V2, the OSD is significantly shifted to the right and wraps. How do I adjust without modifying the goggles? I don't think you can. What video transmitter? What video transmitter, Coelho? Is it analog? The 03. No. I wonder if you... I don't know. I wonder if your problem is that you have a mismatch between the HD canvas setting in the goggles and the OSD. I'm trying to think how that would work. I think what you should do is in the goggles, go to display and make sure that the canvas mode is set to HD. I think that if the canvas mode in the goggles is set to SD, standard definition, it puts it in the center of the goggle, and you have an HD canvas that's being pushed to the center of the goggle and going off the edge of the goggle. So your flight controller is set to HD correctly, but then your goggles are not set to HD. So that's what you should do. Go to display in the goggles, look for the canvas mode, the canvas, and there's normal and HD. Make sure your goggles are set to HD canvas. I believe that would do it. Okay, there we go. That's all the super chats. Guess my poll didn't really increase the number of super chats. What do you think about 360 cameras on FPV drones? I think it would be interesting. Not only would it be interesting, there was a period of time 4 years ago where it was all the hotness. I made a video with Stan FPV about this. This is Stan FPV, who has something called the Cinnabird. And he's doing all this with a 360 cam.
You're serious. You have 100 people. It's $1 million shoot, possibly. Like, there's so much riding on it, and there's so much pressure that you have to be able to handle more than what's given on a normal situation, because it's going to be crazy the day of. If you push it on set and mess up, then you're gonna, I mean, that's gonna be bad. That's gonna be bad in all aspects. Because if you're going for YouTube, if you're going for professional Hollywood shoots, if you're going for anything.
So let's see if we can see the drone. There we go. So here's the drone, and what it does, look at my old set. Oh, look at my old self. It puts the whole drone in the seam line of the 360 cam, so you cannot see the drone. And then basically it's an invisible drone. Yep, this is something that was explored roughly 4 years ago. There are still, people still make the frames, I think. Does Stan still make, does he still make the Cinnabird? Yeah, you can still buy it. You can still buy the Stan FPV Cinnabird frame, right? Newbie Drone had one. Newbie Drone had the Invisa 360. So they still exist, and it's a pretty cool thing, but a pretty niche thing, and it was like a novelty for a while, and people were super interested in it, and then it didn't seem, you don't really see it a lot now. So there you go. It's kind of cool. Yeah, I think Quarter Digital did a video. Quarter Crew did a video about it once, actually. Could you realistically do long range on stock 04 Pro antenna and G3 beyond 4 to 5 miles? Asks Tigon Wanfra. Most people aren't going to get 4 to 5 miles out of the stock antenna on the 04 Pro. Somewhere out there, there's a person who's really, really good at long range, who knows how to optimize the antennas and has managed to do it. Bear in mind that when you do that, you know, you're at 1 megabit per second and you could barely see anything, and you're flying mostly autonomously, and you better have return to home because you're going to lose it at any minute. Like, in terms of flying around and doing usable work at that range, I think it's unlikely. When I fly and do not range testing, I've got a video that's going to come out just maybe today even, where I used iNav waypoint mission to set up a waypoint 3 kilometers out, and I got about 1.5 kilometers before video was so sketchy that I was like, I could keep flying, but I'm not going to, and I returned to home. That was on the 03, to be fair, not the 04, so take it for what it is. I don't think you're going to get 5 or 10 miles on stock antennas. Someone will, but you probably won't. That's how I would put it. Adam says, I got a question about the DJI 04 antenna. I damaged one in a recent crash. The plastic coating is torn and I can see the metal mesh underneath. Should I replace it or just tape it up and not worry? It doesn't seem to be affecting transmission. If it's not affecting transmission, then it's just your choice as to whether you want to fix it. Bear in mind the 04 antenna. Oh, you mean the 04 antenna on the drone. I was going to say the Goggle antenna is not user serviceable for technically. Some you could do it, but then the drone, as long as you don't see a reduction in range, I'd keep sending it. Almac FPV, I would never go beyond visual line of sight. That would be illegal, and the FAA would fine me. So, no, I was within visual range the whole time. In fact, the beauty of an iNav waypoint mission is that I can personally, I don't need a spotter, I can personally maintain visual line of sight while watching the mission play out on a screen, which is completely legal. And at a distance of 1.5 kilometers, that is still within visual range of the unaided eye. Yeah, William NS says, oh, sorry, wrong one. I regularly get 3.5 to 4 miles on an 03, but using TrueRCs on the Goggles 2 and the Bird. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that, William. I am 100% sure that my line of sight to the drone was not obstructed by terrain or a building. I know this because in iNav, you can get a terrain profile for your flight path, and I could just... And it was basically just straight out and back, so no complexity, right? It's not like I flew around a mountain and got caught. And also, at the end of the flight, when I turned around to come home, I could just turn around, and I was like, I see my house. So I'm as sure as I can be that the line of sight was not obstructed. There are a couple of trees. It's winter, so it was tree branches, but there were a couple of trees in the way. That's going to have some effect. I don't know why I only got like 1.5 kilometers before it was at 1 megabit per second and it was dropping out, and other people go 3 or 4 kilometers or maybe more on the stock antennas. I honestly don't know. I can say that the test conditions were repeatable, and I could say that I'm not a long-range pilot. There are a lot of things I don't know about long-range, so I can't really explain that. That's what I would say. Yeah. Which is better, asks Clive Hunt, the T-Motor Velox stack or the TBS Lucid Freestyle stack? The Lucid Freestyle stack, 1000%. The T-Motor Velox ESC is an absolute piece of trash. I know that because, as I've said on other live streams, I get emails from people who do sort of training programs. People who have a fleet of drones for their cinema setup, right? And I don't name names because I don't want to call people out and embarrass them and make them think I can't keep my mouth shut when they talk to me. But I am regularly in touch with 5 or 10 different organizations, companies, who regularly maintain 10 or 20 or maybe more drones at a time and are building them and doing things with them, etc. And so I use that to keep my ear on the ground. I also talk to the stores who sell, and I'm saying, hey, are you guys having a lot of returns on this product? I can tell you that one of the companies I'm in contact with recently did a build series. They built 10 or 15 drones using the Velox ESC. They normally use the T-Motor F55, but the F55 was completely out of stock and they had to get the drones built. So they bought the Velox anyway, and they were like, well, it's T-Motor, it'll still be good. The Velox ESCs were absolute trash. They were just dying, like a 35% failure rate in this one specific case. And I was like, okay, well, that ESC is dead to me. Now, somewhere out there, there's someone hearing this and going, what do you mean? I run the Velox ESC and it's great. It's bulletproof. I can only speak to my own experience and the experience of the people whose input I trust. And the thing is, one bad experience will sour me on an ESC, right? If I bought a batch of T-Motor F55s after having used them for years and having had them be really good and they died, I might give it a second chance. But if the first time I buy a Velox, and Velox is budget line anyway, if the first time I buy a Velox ESC, I have a 35% failure rate out of 15 or 20 or however many ESCs, that's just it. You're dead to me. Don't buy it. The Lucid is new and unproven, but TBS has a good track record for making good shit, so I would be willing to give it a chance. Velox motors are pretty good, Nick Hayes. Agree. They just they effed up the ESC as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Two questions about your long range thing. I know you said you don't really do it, but just theorizing. Yeah. One, as mentioned in the chat, is like Fresnel zone.
Fresnel zone.
Fresnel zone, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so valid. Fresnel zone, for those who don't know, is a 3-dimensional area between a transmitter and receiver that's shaped like an ellipse. And basically, your radio transmission is not a laser beam, okay? If this is the transmitter and this is the receiver, there is a volume of space around the direct line of sight path, and anything in that space will mess up your signal, okay? So like in this example, even though the direct line of sight path is perfectly clear, these mountaintops are blocking the Fresnel zone and are causing a degradation of signal. So here's another example, right? This tree maybe is, now this tree isn't protruding very much into the Fresnel zone. So when you think about radio line of sight, you have to take the Fresnel zone into account. Here's another example of the Fresnel zone being obstructed. However, if we do a Fresnel zone calculator, the distance is kilometers. Let's say it's 1.5 kilometers. The frequency is 5.8 gigahertz. The Fresnel zone radius is 14 feet or 4 meters. So I would need to have 4 meters clearance at the exact midpoint of the transmission path, and then it's less. And I can assure you, based on my terrain profile, based on the altitude, I used the highest legal altitude, well, slightly less than the highest legal altitude, etc. I can assure you that the Fresnel zone was clear. I did take that into account when I was, except for the trees. And like, you know, a sparse tree, it's not nothing. I don't know if it should be knocking me down from, 4 miles to 1.5 kilometers, though. I don't know.
Okay. And then the other thing was, we talked about, I think the last weekend, we talked about the auto and manual bug, where if you have your drone goggles in auto, then there's a weird megabit per second bug where they're way lower than they should be. Where you happen to be in auto in the testing, maybe?
Well, it's the 03, so I had manual channel.
Oh, you were in the 03.
This was for the 03. What I was testing was the BDI. My OBS just Wait, something weird just happened. Oh, no, it's okay. I was testing the BDI antennas for the Goggles 2. So I tested with the 03 because Goggles 2, 03, right? And I can tell you that I had 50 megabits per second for most of the test. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. Yeah, so I don't think that bug came into play, but it was auto power because that's just what the 03 has.
Gotcha.
Here's something that the DJI Goggles 2 can do. Yeah, so here are the four tests. The stock 03 antenna on the right. And yeah, this is the test sort of playing itself out. The beautiful thing about this waypoint mission is it is repeatable enough that although they weren't perfectly synced up, they were pretty close to synced up when I dropped them in the video. And the distance to home tracked mostly, not exactly, but mostly. So yeah, this is the test. Anyway. And I don't know if you're going to get to see a turn to home. Let's see. On the right ones, I actually, I had an EP2 receiver in the drone, so I fail-safed the drone. And I was just like, okay, well, we'll let the waypoint mission take care of it. So on the left tests, I didn't want to fail-safe if I didn't have to. So I manually triggered RTH. But on the right tests, I had to fail-safe it or I couldn't complete the mission because of the EP2 receiver buried inside the frame. And so you actually see it turn to home. Maybe we can actually see. And that was sketchy. I was like, okay, I know how this is going to work. It's going to be fine. But just flying through RC Link Lost was definitely... And then eventually you lost video. And you're just like, I trust that this will come home. Of course, I had visual line of sight the whole time. Do we get to see it turn towards home? No, I froze the video. Okay, well, you don't see it. Yeah, suffice it to say, I think the line of sight is clear, except for the trees, which is a known criteria. Anyway. I am transitioning from analog to digital, asks Paul Kong. I don't have a lot of money. Is Fat Shark Walk Snail goggles good? The Fat Shark Dominator HD for $380? It's okay. It's not a terrible choice. I'm not sure I recommend that you buy it because it is end-of-lifed. And right now, I'm pretty sure you can only get the Dominator HD from Rotor Riot. Nobody else even has it in stock. But Rotor Riot has Fat Shark's leftover stock they're trying to move. Right now, this is 100% compatible with every piece of Walksnail hardware made today. You're not really missing out on much getting the Dominator HD compared to the Avatar HD. Price difference, $380 versus $459. Price difference is less than $100. It's $80. So I think if you're going to spend $380 for the Dominator HD, you should just save your pennies for another couple weeks and spend $450 on the Avatar HD, which are the latest and greatest. They're better in some ways. They have support for HDMI in and HDMI out and analog. But more importantly, this is a dead product. Eventually, this will not be usable anymore when Walksnail releases some new VTX that isn't compatible. And Fat Shark is just trying to move their remaining inventory and not lose a bunch of money on it. Whereas this is the product that will have future support by Walksnail. So I think the Fat Shark Dominator HD needs to be less than $380. If it was $280, it might be compelling. I don't know. I just pulled that number out of my butt. But I think for $80 extra, you should just get the Goggles X. So there's also the Walksnail Goggles L, which is not a terrible choice for only $200. It has some drawbacks. You watch my review of the Goggles L if you want to. Yeah. Swift69 asks, you mentioned the Goggles L are hard to see the top and bottom at the same time. Are the Fat Shark Recon HD the same way? Yeah, all box goggles are like that. They're just so small, and if you don't get them exactly right on your face, then you can't see the top and bottom at the same time. Everybody's face is going to be different, but I would say I had the same experience. No expectation that Goggles X will be future compatible either. I mean, Walksnail explicitly advertises the Goggles X as having a modular radio board that can be changed out for future compatibility. If they were, it would be a great betrayal, which I'm not saying they're not going to do it, but it would be a great betrayal for them to advertise the Goggles X as being modular specifically for future compatibility and then not live up to that whenever they finally release their next generation system, which who knows when that will be.
Yeah, to be clear, they're going to charge you for it. But the idea is that you don't have to buy an entire new goggle with a new vision system and a new screen and all that stuff, right?
Correct.
You're saving money.
Yeah. Yeah. If they didn't do that, it would be a great betrayal. And I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't know why they wouldn't do it. Like, unless somehow they discovered that the Goggles X couldn't do what they needed the next radio system to do, but, like, how could that even be? It's all speculation, though. I'm building a sub-250 analog 3.5 inch. Should I use XT60 or XT30? I think XT30 is probably going to be fine. I can't imagine, because XT30 is nominally rated for 30 amps, but that's 30 amps continuous without airflow. You could easily push more than 30 amps, and you're probably not going to pull 30 amps. So I think XT30 is fine. But what you should do is, you should look at the battery you intend to use. Ask yourself, what battery am I going to use? I'm going to use the Tattoo R-Line V5 not the 1300, no. Tattoo R-Line V5, because I'm a baller. I'm going to spend all my money on batteries. 4S. Give it to me. 300 milliamp, 1300? 850. This is the battery I'm going to use. The Tattoo 850, 4S, 150C, blah, 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 blah. It's got an XT30 plug. Done. If the battery comes with an XT30, then the manufacturer has determined that the amount of current that battery can provide is safe for an XT30, and it doesn't matter what kind of drone you have, right? So pick a battery, and pick several batteries. I bet they're all going to come with XT30s. That's how you answer that question. Oh, let's see here. Meme FPV in the Discord. Thank you for being a patron, Meme. Meme FPV in the Discord says, just wired up a new T-Motor FC AIO. I get 3 beeps when I plug in the LiPo. 5 beeps if I also plug in USB. 3 beeps when you plug in the LiPo. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, Blinty.
He says he's also getting no power on ELRS receiver.
So, yeah. So what this is telling us is that the 5-volt regulator on your flight controller is either short-circuited, like with you solder bridged 5-volt to ground by accident, and if you find a solder bridge and remove it, everything will probably be fine, or the 5-volt regulator died somehow. We don't know how. Okay? What's happening is that you plug in battery, the ESC powers up, but the flight controller doesn't power up because the 5-volt regulator powers the flight controller. When you plug in USB, because USB provides 5-volt power and the ELRS not powering up is a further confirmation that your 5-volt regulator is dead. Usually, this means new flight controller. How did it die? I don't know. It died either it was defective or you killed it. I don't know how you would have killed it. It's pretty, like, if you short circuit a 5-volt regulator, usually they'll just brown out, but then as soon as they wake up, as soon as you remove the short, everything is fine. Desolder everything from the flight controller and see if it powers up from battery. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, this could also be a bent pin in the ESC to FC plug.
It's an all-in-one.
So make sure you check that. Oh, it is an all-in-one. Okay, yep, fair enough.
How could it be a bent pin?
The
Like the
providing power.
VBAT is bent and VBAT's not plugged
Correct.
in. Yeah, that's valid.
Yeah,
That's
definitely
valid.
desolder everything and look for solder balls.
Yep. It says, I did use a motor screw that was too long at first, but I replaced it before powering up. Sorry to say that that motor screw, now that wouldn't cause the FC to not power up. That would cause the ESC to smoke. But if you use too long of a screw and it touched the windings can still be damaged even though you remove the screw. If you damage the enamel coating on the wires, then when you power up, but the fact that you powered up and it didn't smoke suggests you got away with it. So. What's your good budget-friendly 6S battery? I'm happy to tell you guys that I have been working on my website finally, and the 5-inch Freestyle page has been completely updated. And I'm continuing now. I'm working on the HD page. Hang on a second. Let me show you. Let me show you why I hate Walksnail today. This is a joke. I don't hate Walksnail. It's a joke. I am a little annoyed. Here's why I'm annoyed at Walksnail today. Hold on. I have been working on the digital video section of the website, and that means I have to create a new product listing for every product that's going to be on there. And Walksnail, so here's the DJI products. Hang on, let me go to manufacturer, and let me go to DJI. No, I want to. Oh, can I just see the list of products? No. Do I filter? Filter. Can I filter? No. Okay. Categories. Digital video transmitters. What if I just view? There we go. Oh. Okay, this doesn't work yet. We'll just scroll through the list. Sorry for wasting your time. If we look at the DJI, we've got like 4 goggles and 2 air units done. Now there's going to be more accessories and stuff. If we look at Walksnail, there's 2 goggles and then the VRX and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 air units. I spent 4 hours yesterday making these listings. I know that's like, how could it take that long? Well, for every single one, I have to write a blurb. I have to download the image and crop the image. I have to find all the product listings. So thanks, Walksnail. You're awesome. Thanks for having so much choice. Anyway, going back to the question, I'll restart the question, Blunty, for the clip. Nostalgic asks, what's a good budget-friendly 6S battery? And to answer that question, we're going to go to my website, fpvknowitall.com, home of the ultimate FPV shopping list, which some of the pages are a little bit out of date, but I have recently updated, not that recently, updated February 9th, the 5-inch Freestyle page, and I'm happy to tell you that the battery recommendations there are solid. And if we go to batteries, the Speedy Pizza 6S is a great budget battery. I'd love to hear from the chat if there are any other suggestions for solid budget batteries. It's kind of hard to find like good, really good batteries that still come in at a decent price. This one's $21 for a 6S 1200. I think that's mighty hard to beat. Yeah. What's a good budget battery, chat? CNHL? Yeah, I like CNHL. Let's see what they have to offer. CNHL. Oh my gosh. Batteries, 6S. We'll do 1,000 and 1,300. Oh my gosh. Just reload the whole page. That's good. Oh, I see. We can only select one at a time? Can't select multiple? Fair enough. Connector? Manufacturer? CNHL. What if we just sort by price? Sort by price, low to high. What do we got? Here's the Speedy Pizza. And then we come to CNHL Black for 26, GNB for 27, RDQ for 28. Like, immediately, these don't feel like budget batteries to me anymore. You know? Immediately, we're in the $27 to $32 price range. And, like, there's just a million batteries in that price range. But is that budget? Is $32? Like, what's a good 6S 1200-ish battery for less than $25? I don't know. Dogcom? $1380 6S 22.2 volts. It's $40. That's not a budget. That's not budget. Hello? Yeah. So, there you go. Now, if you go to CNHL's website, I think the prices are a little bit better. I loathe these pop-ups. I loathe them. They piss me off every time. 6S capacity 350 to 2,000. That's not that usable. Price. Oh, let's do price. Less than $25. Mini Star 850, 1,000, 1,300. Here's a $22 1,300 Mini Star 120C. Is the Mini Star any dang good? Is it any good though? Like, that's the right price, but like, we know the Speedy Pizza is a really solid battery. Yeah. In packs of 2 or 4, they're cheaper. All right. Maybe the Mini Star. Yeah, but the Speedy Pizza is a good one. Anthony Frisket says, I have a follow-up question. When you're talking about startup and ramp-up power, I have a SpeedyBee F4 with Blue Jay, and I had a problem with the motors where it didn't want to spin, so I slightly increased my idle speed in beta flight, and then everything worked fine. Is that a different situation, or did I do that incorrectly? The idle speed, I don't know how that's going to affect the startup power. I suppose the ESC might kick harder if you're asking for a higher throttle. I think that idle speed should be as low as possible to prevent the motor from stalling. And if your problem is the startup power, you should solve it by changing the startup power. Like, don't change the wrong thing that coincidentally happens to fix the problem. Change the right thing, because changing the wrong thing is going to have other knock-on effects. Mirat says, why are the delays between the live stream and the podcast so huge? Can you address that? Just because it's not a priority to me to get them uploaded promptly. I upload the live streams. Fabio converts them to MP3. He delivers them to me, and then like once a month I go, oh shit, I got to upload the live streams, and then I do. And that's not how you ideally would like live streams to be, or podcasts to be, but that's just how it is. There's no good reason other than that it's not a priority to me. I'm just being straight with you. It's just not like I just have other things that are a high priority, and uploading the podcast is just not up there. And I upload them. I mean, I get them uploaded, but then I upload a whole month at a time, and then, there's a gap. Oh, we got a lot more Super Chats since I last read Super Chats. Let's read some Super Chats. Have you seen the Zero Drag Warp F7 FC from India? Thank you, RC Aviators. Yeah, I have. Yeah, there's some Indian companies designing and producing ESCs nowadays. Good to see India coming into the manufacturing realm. Yeah, I have seen that. The ultimate freestyle stack. I'm sure that Indian FPV pilots are glad to have something domestically produced. So, very cool. Coelho FPV says, you are effing awesome. I fixed it. Coelho, here's the thing, man. That problem, once you set that setting in the goggles, it's set forever. So I don't know why it only happened on one FC and not the other. Are your other FCs set to a high definition canvas? They should be. Maybe they're not. iFlight Nazgul V3. Question from Insane FPV. Thank you for $10. iFlight Nazgul V3 with the 03 PNP. What's your opinion on binding of the DJI controller versus adding Express LRX? I would always add Express LRS. I don't like the DJI RC controller. It's fine for flying the Avata, but for flying FPV drones, it's not my favorite ergonomics, and it has limited switches and knobs. So finally, I would like my control link to be separate from my video link, so that if I lose video, I have a chance to hit the return to home button or something. Or if I lose control, I can have DVR of watching the drone crash so I can see where it crashed. I want my video link and my control link to be separate. With DJI, if you run the RC controller, your control and your video link are the same thing, and if you lose one, you lose the other. It's convenient, but the ergonomics on the controller are not my favorite, and it has limited switches and knobs, and so it's just, to me, I would always put Express LRS on the bird. Karan T. Karant? Thank you for 10 pounds. My balance plug got messed up by the props, but the wires got stripped as well. How do I fix it? Buy a new balance plug and solder, then splice the wires on. What's the lightest drone frame that's also durable? There's no such thing. The lighter the drone frame, the less durable it is. You want durability, you're going to pay with weight. There's no way to sort of... There's ways you could do it a little better or a little worse, but you also didn't tell me what size you're looking for. So I don't know if you're talking about a 3-inch, a 2-inch, a 5-inch, what. But the short version is that lightweight frames are not as durable, and heavy frames are usually more durable, but not always. Simply adding weight doesn't necessarily increase durability if the engineering is bad. But a well-designed durable frame is going to be heavier than a well-designed lightweight frame. Thank you for €5. What's with the podcast delay? 50 days? Has it been 50 days? This is a long time. What can be done? I don't know. Complain at me. That usually works. How long has it been since I last uploaded the podcasts? Oh, yeah, January 12th. Yeah, it's been a minute. How many podcasts do I have stacked up? Where are the podcasts, Fabio? There are no podcasts. Fabio hasn't done the podcasts. Is that true? Uh-oh. Yeah, so here's the issue. So part of the reason there's a delay is that I'll go away and we won't stream for 3 weeks. Okay? Then when we come back, it takes me another 3 weeks before I start uploading the podcasts. That's why there's a delay. You're not missing as many as you think. Like right now, in the uploads, here are the podcasts that have been uploaded, but not uploaded to Patreon. These are waiting to be processed. So the last one you saw was January 12th, but then there was a break till February 9th. Okay? So that's part of the reason there's as much a delay as there is. Yeah, it's right on track. And 4 weeks later, I finally uploaded. Anyway. Here's a question. Are these... Where's TRY? Is this Turkish? Yeah, Turkish lira. Thank you for 109 Turkish lira from... I don't know how to say these letters, but thank you for your donation. I have TBS Crossfire Nano on my quad, and as soon as I touch the antenna, I lose connection with the transmitter. Any suggestions? That sounds like a grounding issue to me. I would certainly replace the antenna and see if that fixed it. Maybe replace the receiver, check the grounding. I don't know. It's not normal, that's for sure. Don't touch the antenna. There's a question here from Gunnar Schweiterman. Gunnar, I'm gonna. Is Ghost Branch here? Is Ghost Branch FPV here? Gunnar, I'll get your question in just a second. Actually, you have to go soon. I'll tell my little anecdote after I get your question. The question from Gunnar Schweiterman. What is your question? Well, that's not your username. Jeff Gunther. El Jefe Gunther. El Jefe asks, my LEDs won't change colors. I update them in Betaflight, but nothing changes and they are always red. You have the SpeedyBee flight controller. Here's the issue. The issue is that the SpeedyBee flight controller has its own built-in LED controller. So the way it works is you have to hold down the bootloader button to change from the if you like, it's like if you press the bootloader button. Let me see if I can find this documentation. Yeah, okay. So by default, the flight controller controls the LEDs. You tap the bootloader button and change the colors. But if you want Betaflight to control the LEDs, long press the bootloader button and it switches to let the flight controller control the LEDs. That's why they don't work. Okay. That's glad to answer that question. And thank you for being a patron. With a name like, what is it? Gunther Schweiter something, Schweiterman. I'm going to guess you're German. Blunty, you and I talked before the stream. I'm watching Dark for the second time. Dark is a German show, a great, great drama. I love it, and it's even better watching it the second time. And every time I watch it's in German, so I watch it with subtitles. And every time I watch Dark, I pick up more German words. So I have no Dark spoilers in the chat. Thank you. Blunty is about to watch Dark for the first time. You will be immediately timed out for 24 hours if you put Dark spoilers in the chat. I'm not joking. But every time I watch Dark, I pick up like 2 more German words. And they're such weird and obscure words, you know. Like the first time I watched, I picked up passiert, which means happened. And now I have also picked up Zukunft, which is future, and vielleicht, which means maybe or perhaps. And I'm so proud of myself for knowing 3 German words. Ich weiß nicht, which means I don't know. I'm sure there's more. It's so weird. It's so weird to like be randomly picking up these German phrases. I'm not even trying to learn German. Anyway. I wish I meant to tell that to Ghost Branch FPV just kind of as a joke. The first time I watched Dark, I said to Ghost Branch FPV is German. He's a friend of mine on the Discord server. I said to him, "Man, that show is really good. I've got to find some more German dramas just like this." And he said, No. Dark is the exception. Most German television shows are not that good. Anyway. Thank you for the comment. Red Honu says my pronunciation is surprisingly good. I'm a parrot. I will say, I think I have a better than average ear for pronunciation, which means that if you say something to me in a foreign language and I try to mimic it, I won't get it perfect, but I'll do better than average at picking up on the small differences in vowel sounds and so forth, and I will mimic it, not perfectly, but better than average. If I try to learn a language, that helps a little bit, but actually producing the vowel sounds in the correct context is harder. But if I hear you say it and mimic it, I'll get it pretty close. So, anyway.
As an aside, I recently heard that there are some vowel sounds that are hard for people to even hear if they aren't raised in a certain area. Like at 9 months old, you start to lose vowel sounds, like the ability to learn new vowel sounds, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. That's the challenge. There are two challenges, I think, in learning to pronounce a foreign language. And one is that there will be sounds in the foreign language that are either not present in your language, which is like why Chinese people or Japanese people have trouble with the letter R in English. And one will be that there will be a tendency for you to say words using your native pronunciation when you should actually say them using the other pronunciation, you know? Yeah. So it's a struggle. But it's fun. That's the fun, right? That's the fun. Gunnar, you press the boot button after power up. You hold it after power up. And the way to know if what this is going on, Gunnar, just click it once, and if the LEDs change color, that confirms that the flight controller is controlling the LEDs. And then hold it down, and Betaflight will take control. I had a really freaky experience. I was learning Ukrainian recently, and trying to get the pronunciation right. And at one point I was speaking out loud, and I know better than most Americans probably, because I tried to learn Ukrainian, that the Ukrainian accent and the Russian accent are not the same. Okay, I think it would be really insulting to Ukrainians to suggest that they're the same. But there are some parallels between, they're both Eastern European Slavic languages. And I was speaking Ukrainian out loud, and I thought to myself, oh, it sounds kind of like I'm doing a fake Russian accent. And I realized that the reason accents are the way that they are is because that's how you pronounce the letters and phonemes in the language. That no one went, I know, I will do a German accent. No, that was not just a terrible accent. That's just what German sounds like. And so if you're correctly pronouncing German, it will sound like you're doing a German accent. And I was like, oh, what an insight. Cracked me up.
I had a friend in middle school who moved from Colombia, and after speaking with him for a while, I would just start speaking in a Colombian accent when I was speaking with him. And other people would be like, why are you doing that? And I'd be like, I just started doing it, and he understands it, and he's happy that I'm doing it because he knows what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Both of us are happy with the situation, so I'm going to keep doing it because I can actually communicate with him properly, you know?
I do that too. and it's I think there's a name for it. I think it's a psychological, like mirroring. I don't know. And it's because you want to communicate with the person, you want to be understood, you want rapport, and I think not everybody does it. When my wife first, like, I live in the South, I don't have a Southern accent, even though I grew up in the South. My family's from the North, but if I'm hanging out with a bunch of, or if I'm like in a store and the person has a really heavy Tennessee accent, I will have more of a Southern accent, a Tennessee or Georgia accent, than I do when I'm at home. Or if, like, a guy comes to my house to, work on the plumbing or, whatever, and, like, as soon as I'm talking to him, I'll affect more of kind of like a good old boy cadence and accent. And my wife, when she first saw it, and she, like, thought, she was like, "Are you making fun of them? Are you like, because you don't talk like that?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I didn't even know I was doing it." And it's not. It's just, it's not intentionally mimicking. It's like you're trying to create rapport and be understood, right? And I do it a little bit with Spanish speakers. I do it a little bit, if I'm talking to someone who's a native Spanish speaker here. So it doesn't surprise me at all, Blunty, that you did it with your Colombian friend. Yeah. And it helps.
Somebody in chat mentioned a term which was close, but it made me find the other term, which is apparently echolalia.
Yeah.
It's unsolicited, but it's like, in its profound form, it is automatic and effortless, which is kind of what happens to me. It just sort of happens, and I don't really notice that I'm doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. If I speak to someone long enough who has an accent, I will subtly mimic their accent back to them. Because it's just like, that's clearly how you say that word. And I want you to understand what I'm saying. So I'm going to talk to you closer to the way that you talk to me. And we're going to kind of come together. All right, continuing the super chats. Raphael H asks, what's the formula for how many watts I need on my charger to charge multiple batteries at 1C? For example, to charge 4 6S1300s on a Hoda F6. Yeah, no problem. The way we do that math is, what I like to do is, so 1300 milliamp hours, we're going to be charging at 1.3 amps. Okay? 1.3 amps. That's 1C, right? That's what you said. And then watts equals volts times amps. So then what voltage are you going to be at? And here's the thing. You're going to start out at the 3.8 volts, 3.6 volts, right? Whatever your battery's at when you're charging. So the watts will be lower. And it's going to push 1.3 amps. And it's going to stay at 1.3 amps as the battery charges up and the voltage increases. So the watts is going to go up. And then eventually, somewhere around like 4.1 volts, it's going to level off. And it's going to enter constant current mode instead of constant voltage mode. And the current will go down. Or constant voltage mode. The current will go down. Okay? So what I like to do is, if you want the absolute maximum wattage with a little bit of headroom, use 4.2 volts. But know that you won't ever be at 1.3 amps at 4.2 volts. Well, I guess that's not true. Because when the battery's at 4.1 volts, you'll be at 4.2 to hold. Yeah, okay. So use 4.2 volts. Fine, I talked myself into it. 1.3 amps times 4.2 volts is 5 watts, 5.4 watts per cell. So then we're going to multiply by 6. 32 watts, 33 watts. That's how you do it. So the short version is take your charge rate, 1.3 amps, or whatever you want it to be, times 4.2 volts, times the number of cells, times 6 cells, and that gives you the watts. Quad shows RX failsafe, even though the transmitter's connected. Check if you have movement in the receiver tab. I'm going to guess you don't. And then figure out why the receiver is not getting signal to the flight controller. That's kind of an open-ended question that I am not going to be able to like just dial in for you. Number one, make sure that the receiver is bound to the controller. Solid LED on the receiver. If it's Express LRS, solid LED on the receiver. Crossfire, solid green LED. However it does it. Okay? Make sure it's bound. If it's bound, then the problem probably is a wiring problem. Maybe your TX and your RX wires are not swapped. Maybe your ports tab is wrong. But that... Check your wiring. Move the receiver to a different UART. Maybe there's something wrong with your flight controller UART.
EX says signal critical. Critical signal. What does that mean?
I don't know. That didn't sort of make sense to me.
Yeah.
I also don't know what no IP means. No I/P. I don't know what that means. I'm gonna guess like when he unplugs it, it says RF signal critical. I don't know. But if he's got RX failsafe, then like literally the receiver is not getting signal to the flight controller.
Is there a different warning for if you have it turned on in the modes tab? It's like failsafe box, right? It's a different one.
Yep. Failsafe
Okay.
box. Yep. So Willie FPV suggests model match could be the problem. If model match was the problem, then the LED on the Express LRS receiver would be blinking 3 times. That's why I say look for solid LED on the receiver.
Yeah, he says no input. So yeah, something's wrong with the way you've got it set up. You've either got it wired wrong.
No input.
I always like to check, just for sanity's sake, is go in the Express LRS Lewis script and look in the top right corner for that C. And if that C is solid, you don't have any errors. But it's the same as pretty much looking at the LED, except you don't know if it's in bootloader mode, right? But generally speaking,
fair.
That's the way to look at it. If you see that solid C in the corner, it's not flashing, then you know you're connected. It's got to be wiring or Betaflight setup, and you just go from there.
Yeah. One other thing to keep in mind is that some flight controllers put the DJI S-Bus pad on the same UART as one of the UART pads. So if you have an air unit plugged in and powered up, and let's say that the S-Bus is on RX2 in the plug that the air unit plugs into. If the air unit is powered up and plugged in, and you have your receiver on TX2 RX2, they will conflict and it won't work. And the symptom of that will be that when you unplug the battery, the receiver works because the air unit is no longer powered up and is no longer conflicting. But as soon as you plug in the battery, it stops working. And the solution for that is either move your receiver to a different UART or cut the yellow wire going to the air unit.
Also, if you've got no color on your bars in the receiver tab, you may also need to flash for the correct protocol. So like if you set to CRSF, but all your bars are white, then you need to reflash Betaflight, backup, reflash, and then set CRSF at flashing so that you get those colored bars back. Lots of little weird gotchas in the process at this point.
If you want to email, we can walk through it. Yeah. Richie's, because I realized that was a lot of if this, then that, if this, then that, and that's not really helpful if you don't already know what we're talking about. So you could just email jb@joshuabardwell.com. We'll try and sort you out. Richie's Random Photography, thanks for $7 Canadian. I want to get into cinewhooping and freestyle. I can't decide if I get a bind and fly or build one, or even which I should get into first. For cinewhooping, I don't think there's a lot of point in building your own cinewhoop. The bind and flies are very good, and the cinewhoops are fairly integrated. So you're going to buy a frame, and then you're going to be like, ooh, what motors should I put on this frame? And like the motors the manufacturer selected are really ideal. So like you could buy different motors, but you're not going to probably not going to make things much better. And then what flight controller will I get? Well, it turns out that frame is made just to mount that flight controller. And so you're going to end up probably just building something worse than a bind and fly but anyway, so especially if it's your first one and you kind of don't know, I specifically want this, just buy a bind and fly. For a 5-inch freestyle drone, maybe. For a 3-inch freestyle drone, there's maybe more. The bind and fly choices are less well optimized and less, there's more flexibility in what you might want out of it. But build a freestyle drone, buy a cinewhoop. That's my advice. Luis Legarreta says the issue wasn't fixed by bumping up PPM min throttle or PPM max throttle. Blunty, I don't think PPM min throttle and PPM max throttle are the parameters we told him to change. We told him to change the startup power, right?
Correct, but
Does that what
would only
Blue Jay calls them?
Yeah, but I think you would only see that if you were using. I don't know. If you use BLHeli configurator, does it do that or does it error out? Because Blue Jay changed the PPM min and max sliders from PPM min and max to the startup power sliders. So are you still on BLHeli S or are you on Blue Jay? Is
this Blue Jay? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I would go with there.
I don't think you should be seeing PPM min throttle or PPM max throttle. Correct.
I think that's a BLHeli S thing.
Are you using esc-configurator.com website? Can I use
if it's the wrong
Can I use the DJI
code.
dual antennas on my Walksnail Moonlight? I mean, yes, I don't know if it's ideal. The DJI antennas are linear polarized, and they are dual band antennas. And in a pinch you could, but they're not going to get as good range as you would on the stock antennas. Lamont Price leaves $1. No question, just a nice little donation. Thank you, Lamont. All right, that's the super chats. Let's go back and get some more chats from the regular chat. Why go Gemini if the range isn't significantly better? Gemini gives better LQ, better link quality. Gemini, if you expect to encounter interference, Gemini is really good. Let's say I'm on a movie set and I'm running 2.4 gigahertz. And I've heard this problem from people. They're like, there's this other device. There's a Terra deck there's movie sets are full of wireless devices. And so you're like, I'm going to be flying and somebody's going to power up the confabulator and it's going to knock me out of the air. Gemini is great for that because you can run 900 and 2.4 at the same time. And if one gets knocked out, the other will take care of you. Okay? Gemini is great if you're a racing pilot and you want the maximum LQ so you don't get any dropped packets. Gemini doesn't significantly increase range. That's not what it's for. It's never been what it's for. Gemini increases LQ. So think about how your LQ works. At the beginning, LQ is 100%. You fly away. Eventually, you fly away far enough that LQ starts to drop. In that area where LQ is less than 100%, but not fail-safing, Gemini will boost the LQ a little bit and keep that link solid longer. That's what Gemini's for. Gemini, I would make the argument that Gemini and the crossband receivers are not that compelling for a lot of people. So, like, Radio Master just released this line of crossband receivers, the XR series receivers. I think it's absolutely worth having a Gemini transmitter. The GX12 and the Nomad transmitter, I think that they should be the default for anybody who might ever maybe sort of want to use 900 megahertz. And why wouldn't you, right? If you only had a 2.4 gigahertz module, then you could do everything you need on 2.4 gig. But once you have the option for 900 meg, you go, oh, I'm going to go fly a flying wing. And I might want to do some medium range stuff. I'll go 900. It's going to do better. A little better than 2.4 gig. But the dual band receivers, I think most people don't need them. Because here's the thing. The point of a dual band receiver is that you can do 2.4 gigahertz today and 900 megahertz tomorrow without ever changing the antenna. All you do is go into your radio and you change the packet rate from 2.4 gig to 900, and now you're on 900. How often do you need to do that? If I have an airplane that's a long-range plane and it's on 900 megahertz, when will I ever be like, you know what? I can't use 900 meg today. I have to use 2.4. It's not that likely, is it? And if I have a racing drone that is on 2.4 gigahertz, when am I ever going to go, dang, I sure wish I could run 900 meg today, just today? right? You're probably just going to run that racing drone on 2.4 gigahertz all the time. So the dual band module lets you operate all of those models with one module, and that's beneficial. But only people who fly in places where there's a lot of interference will need the crossband functionality. Think about it. You've got crossband functionality, so you're transmitting on 2.4 and 900 at the same time. So what that means is I'm going to use 2.4 meg when I'm up close, 2.4 gig, when I'm up close, and get faster packet rates. And then I'm going to use 900 meg when I get far away and get longer range. That's how the FreeSky dual band system worked. It was low latency when you're up close and long range when you're far away. Express LRS gives you low latency in both 900 and 2.4. It's the same packet rate. You're at 200 hertz or whatever. It doesn't matter. At that point, why wouldn't you just use 900 megahertz? Why would you ever be on 2.4 gigahertz if you've already got a big 900 megahertz antenna on your aircraft? And the only answer to that question that I can see is if you expect 900 megahertz to get knocked out by interference, and you need 2.4 as your failover, or vice versa. And most of the time, that's not an issue for most people. So I agree that Gemini in the transmitter is very useful because it lets you do switch bands and do that. But Gemini or dual band, the XR series of receivers, I think are not as useful. They're kind of cool, but not actually as useful for hobbyists as it seems like they might be. Gosh, I wonder who else in the world might be in a situation where a frequency band that they're using suddenly gets interfered with. Who is it that these receivers could be for? Enough said. Real One asks, when I crash, I sometimes have to disconnect the battery because the ESC doesn't spin up. After I reconnect, I can arm fine. Is this normal? That's not normal. There was a version of BL 32 that had a bug that caused this. Am I remembering that right, Blunty?
Yeah, I've been talking to him in chat, actually, back and forth a little bit. He's trying to see what version he has.
Okay, yeah. BL 32, 32.9 had this bug. And if you are experiencing this bug, you can't fix it because BL Heli shut down and it's no longer possible to flash BL Heli 32 ESCs. So you either get a new ESC or you flash your ESC to AM32, which is a hassle, but it will fix the problem. Why can Walk Snail record different FPS and resolution settings of what you're flying? Asks Dennis Riesbeck. Why can't DJI do that? The short answer is that DJI didn't let you. Would love to fly low latency but record at 60 FPS, for example. I don't think Walk Snail does that. Maybe the Moonlight. Can the Moonlight do that? Can the Moonlight record 60 FPS but transmit 100 FPS? I mean, ultimately, that's just a question of software. And DJI did not want to task their processor in the air unit with doing that. That's the short version. There's no technological reason why they couldn't have done that. They would have to drop frames or re-encode the video, and they just didn't want to do that. So the air unit encodes the video and transmits it and records it, right? There is some down-resing. If the air unit is recording at 4K, it's still only transmitting 1080p to the goggles. But a down-res is, interesting. I guess that changing the frame rates is trickier because you end up with jitter or interpolation. The thing is, the camera sensor, I don't know. I'm about to talk out of my ass. I'm just going to stop. I don't know. I don't know the technical reason why Walk Snail can do it and DJI can't or doesn't. Suffice it to say, DJI could do it, but decided it wasn't worth it. Sovic asks, is it better to ask questions related to FPV from ChatGPT? No. ChatGPT is terrible for that. Do it if you want. It annoys me because people will ask me questions and they'll show me the answers from ChatGPT that they have been following. And I'm not annoyed at you for trying to solve your problem, but I am annoyed that ChatGPT gets you all fucked up. And then you come to me and I have to unfuck you from all the mess ChatGPT has made. And that's frustrating. It's frustrating that ChatGPT has wasted your time. I'm frustrated for you that ChatGPT has wasted your time. You go to ChatGPT and ask a question, and ChatGPT gives you 5 wrong answers and 1 vaguely sort of maybe in the right direction of correct answer, and you do. ChatGPT is like, if your receiver does not respond, here are some things you could be. Number 1, ports tab set incorrectly. Go to the ports tab and confirm that the UART is the right UART that you soldered the receiver to. Yes, correct answer. Number 2, drone not on fire. Place your drone into a safe fire receptacle, pour gasoline on it, and light it on fire. Number 3. And then a dude comes to me, and they're like, well, ChatGPT told me to light my drone on fire, so I did. And the receiver still doesn't work. And I'm like, ah! Like... And ChatGPT is just like, I'm good. I'm just helping. I'm helping.
Then if you ask it and you say, like, hey, you asked me to light my drone on fire, is that correct? And be like, oh, you're absolutely correct. You should never light a drone on fire. It's like, yeah, it's just you have to remember it's like autofilling text based on like the highest percentage like matching or whatever of what it's supposed to fill. So like there's just so many cases where it's going to hallucinate incorrect answers that are not right. With drones, because there isn't a great... Because number 1, drones are very complicated, and number 2, there isn't a huge base of knowledge. Like, Blunty, you've been telling me how amazingly good large language models are at predicting code for programming. They are really good at predicting code for programming as long as you babysit them. That's the thing. You know, that's the thing with FPV drones. If you know enough, you could ask questions and sort of get something out of it. At FPV, it's maybe not advanced enough to really need that. But with I've been doing it with code. I just learned Python, and I've been learning a little bit of other stuff. And like sometimes it will just completely change all the files in your project. And you're like, why did you do that? And you're like, oh, it's like, oh, sorry, I totally shouldn't have done that. You're right. And then it goes and edits all the files back to where they were, you know? Or like I was doing this one thing on a website, and it does the front end and the back end. It's Claude 3.7, which is the new Claude. And it would like introduce a bug where it would keep reloading the page because it moved the function, it unnested the function, and then I would tell it, it would renest the function, everything would be great. And then 2 times later, it would unnest the function again, completely unrelated to what it was doing. And then the page would start flashing, and I couldn't test the thing. And so I had to like set a thing in there, a rule for it to say never unnest a function in these cases. And then it could always look at that rule in the context and know that it should never do it. But like that's the kind of stuff you have to do to babysit, you know, the AI.
So the problem is that the kind of person who's like, I don't know why my receiver doesn't work. Oh, I'm a new FPV pilot. What do I do? I'll ask ChatGPT. You don't know enough to know that for the first thing you should do is reflash your ESC. Okay, I'm going to do it. How do I reflash my ESC? You're on a bunny trail. You're wasting your time, and you're going to F up your ESC. Well, the next thing you should do is wipe your whole flight controller configuration and reflash to a different version of Betaflight. Okay, I'm going to do it. You don't know that that's terrible advice that is breaking your drone. And then, so no. It's not that ChatGPT will never give you the right answer. It's that you won't know all the wrong answers it's giving you are wasting your time. By the way, Facebook and Reddit are the same. And they're slightly better, but like I'll see if somebody asks a question, and they'll be like, when I saw this one this morning. When I plug in my battery, my receiver doesn't work. And immediately you have an O3 air unit, and the S-bus wire is conflicting with the UART. That's immediately. And then somebody's like, well, check your ports tab. And I'm like, that's not There is no way that the ports tab would cause that outcome. When I plug in a battery, the receiver doesn't work. When I unplug the battery, the receiver works. The fact that the receiver works when the battery's unplugged means the ports tab is not the problem. And I appreciate you, random Redditor, for wanting to help, but that is wrong. That is objectively wrong. That cannot be the answer. And so, all I'm saying is ChatGPT gives you the runaround. Reddit and Facebook give you the runaround just as much, with just objectively wrong cannot possibly be the answer. But at least those are helpful people who are at least trying. So, anyway. Let's get a couple more super chats in. We're actually coming. Oh my gosh, time has flown. It's 2:47. Let's get the last few super chats in before we close out the stream. Lamont Price. Thank you for a $20 super chat. Big super chat. Thank you for your generosity, sir. I've been out of the game for a little over 3 years. Built a QAVS2 Johnny FPV frame. What GoPro? What do you recommend any tune from Betaflight? Because I don't know how to tune. Man, I would just fly on the defaults. If you don't know how to tune, the defaults are probably going to be okay for you. And 2307 motors. No. Nah. I don't have a recommended tune. Is there does Mark Spatz have a 5-inch cinematic tune? Maybe that. Let's look. I really have to bite my tongue too, because part of me wants to say, "No, you fool! That cannot be the answer! How dare you waste this person's time with a helpful comment that cannot objectively be the answer? Don't you see?" And I realized that would be incredibly disrespectful and rude and counterproductive. But I have to bite my tongue sometimes. So here's a, ultra cinematic 50 hertz RC link profile. Not the rates. We don't want rates. We want a PID. Categories. Tune. We got any cinematic tunes? No. Yeah. Nope. I don't have a recommendation for you. That's not bad advice. What if we did the freestyle karate tune? Okay? Freestyle karate tune. Okay, but that's going to be way too aggressive. Then after applying the freestyle karate tune, go to PID tuning and turn the this is not a real flight controller. Turn the master multiplier down to 85%. And make sure you load the RC Link profile and choose Ultra Cinematic. That'll get you in a good place probably. Anthony Frischetti, thank you for $5. Says, I didn't realize that was wrong until you answered the original question. Thank you. Thank you for the donation, and glad we were able to help you. Layman board? Or is it 1 a.m.? I think it's lame. Is DJI working on the 04 light issue where it loses connection in a crash and can't be restored until the quad is unplugged and replugged? I'm not familiar with that issue. That doesn't seem right to me. Is your battery dropping out? Is it because when you crash, your battery voltage drops and it browns out and doesn't come back? I have heard of that issue. I'm not aware of them working on that. You need to run the 04 from a regulator so it doesn't brown out during a crash. I'm going to guess that you're running it off a battery, a 1S battery, and when you crash, it's going below 3.7 volts or whatever its minimum is, and then it doesn't come back. That's my guess. You should run it off a 5-volt regulator, and that won't happen. Pietro Net to Tube. Thank you for €5. What? Oh, thanks for what you do. Saved me time and money. My Barrow and compass are not working. If I disconnect the GPS, the Barrow is okay. I'm not going to solve that for you here on the live stream. If you want, I will poke at it with you over email. I think the issue is that the SpeedyBee has a Barrow onboard, and that's using a certain I2C bus, and the Compass is also trying to, it's like conflicting with the I2C bus. And there are some CLI settings related to the I2C bus that might solve it for you. But I would just have to show you those settings, and then you'd have to poke at them and see if you could make it work. I don't have a solid answer. Have you asked SpeedyBee support? They may actually know the answer. Lamont Price. The flight went great, but felt loose, not locked in. Yeah. Nostalgic asks, is it wise to run the 04 light on a 5-inch running off the 5-volt pad? No. The 5-volt, so the air unit can pull, let's say, up to about an amp. I don't remember the exact number. Maybe more than an amp. Shoot.
I think it's like 1.5 or 1.7 or something like that. Yeah.
Is it closer to 2 amps?
On 5-volt, yeah.
Yeah. So at 5 volts, it can pull, and this is when it's doing like 4K recording at max power, but it can pull almost 2 amps. Thank you for the correction, Blunty. And the takeaway is that it is going to be at or above the voltage regulator, the 5-volt regulator on most flight controllers. Many flight controllers have a 1.5 amp 5-volt regulator because they're only expecting to power maybe like a camera and a receiver or a weak analog VTX at most. So I would not, if you know for a fact that your flight controller has like a 2.5 or 3 amp rated regulator, then maybe you could get away with running the 04 light on it. But most flight controllers are going to have a 2 amp regulator, and if you run the 04, I would be concerned about browning it out. I wouldn't do that. You might get away with it, but you should be aware that you might not. That's my point. Okay. Let's get a few more questions in. Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming at 3 o'clock. He's going to post the link to his stream in the chat if you guys want to head on over there after I finish up. Do pro indoor cinema pilots fly angle or acro mode? Most of them fly acro because it produces smoother results. It's very hard to fly very smoothly in angle. I think that I have heard people say occasionally there was a specific job where angle made the most sense, but if you're having trouble doing it in acro because you're not as good a pilot and you're like, well, maybe the pros use angle and I could get away with it. Nope, they all can do it in acro.
Yeah, I would say if you have to use angle, you need to turn the strength down a lot so you're not having the camera jump back and forth from the recorrecting.
It's just not as smooth. Nick asks, I'm getting random RX with express loss 2.4 gigahertz on one of my quads. It's a random RX loss with express loss on one of my quads. It's not because of distance or poor radio environment. The quad's been only 10 meters away and I got RX loss, even after replacing the receiver and tried with another TX module. I think that the wiring is probably not the problem because you changed the receiver. The receiver's not the problem. I think it's a flight controller. I agree with you. It's a flight controller issue. When you got RX loss, did you also have low? Did you get telemetry lost from the controller, or did the receiver stay bound? That's what I would do. I would try and reproduce the issue in such a way that I could see the receiver LED, okay, and where I could see the RSSI bars in the controller. Like you hover the drone line of sight and you look at the receiver LED with your eyes. And when it says RX loss, you look at the receiver LED. And if it stays solid, you know it's a wiring or flight controller issue, not a receiver or not a radio issue.
Yeah, I would also say, if you're tracking LQ and RSSI DBM, it should be obvious to you if this is a random, brownout problem, or if this is a, a trending, I have really short range all the time problem, right? Like if your LQ and RSSI dBm are always terrible, maybe check the voltage out of the FC or something. But if they suddenly get bad or you suddenly have RX loss, I would certainly think it's brownout.
Yeah. Yep. The Andrew Brown says, hey, JB, I've been working on a sub 250 4S build. I'm right below 250 with the SkyStar's 1404 3900 kV motors. I'm using a heavier frame, the Grinder Reno 3.5, and that means the quad doesn't quite have that 8-to-1 power to thrust to power ratio. Yeah, thrust to weight ratio. There we go. I'm thinking to upsize the motors to 15 or 16, but from what I found, this will put me over the weight. Do you have any light frame or motor recommendations? How about the AOS 3.5? That's pretty lightweight. And I think the AOS 3.5 is a better 3.5-inch frame than the AOS is a 5-inch frame. Sausage Man asks, I got started on Tiny Whoops and an Avata 2. The Avata 2 is fun in manual mode, but it lacks punch and washes out, so I want a small freestyle quad with the 04 Pro. Is that feasible in the size? Yes, 100%. A 3-inch can 100% carry the 04 Pro. It won't be under 250 grams, probably, maybe it will. But 3.5 would be better. If you can go 3.5, that'd be better. Are there any solid bind and flies out there yet, or is it too early? Good question. So my first thought, GEP-RC was one of the first companies to come out with bind and flies with the 04. I wonder if they have a Domain 3.6 with the 04 Pro. Domain 4.2 HD, Domain 3.6 HD 03, Domain 3.6 HD. Can we get the Domain 3.6 with the 04? Doesn't seem like it. That's a shame. This would be absolutely awesome. The Domain 3.6. Oh, it doesn't have it. Oh, you could put, I don't know if it'll hold the 04. It would be great if they'd made a Domain 3.6 with the 04. It doesn't look like they have. That's a shame. What's a bind and fly 3.5 with the 04 in it? Rotor Riot probably has the tank with an 04. I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for. Prospect Starter Kit Tank S35. It's so hard to... Ready to fly drones. It's like, can I just... Tank 35 Prospect drone. Not available with the 04 Pro. Damn. Out of stock. I don't know if that would be my pick anyway. He's looking for a bind and fly, not a frame. Yeah. I don't know if I have a great... it seems like I'm not coming up with any great choices, frankly. 5-inch maximum weight with battery and GoPro, 800 grams. 750 is better. If it's over 800, I would consider it too heavy, but that's not everybody would. Is it worth getting the DJI 04 Lite or save a bit more for the 03 on a 5-inch? I wouldn't put the 04 Lite on a 5-inch. I'd put the 04 Pro. Or I'd take the 03. I think the 04 Lite is not a good choice. I would put the 03 on a 5-inch before I put the 04 Lite. That's just my personal opinion. All right. Guys, we're running out of time. We have a bunch more questions queued, but unfortunately we are running out of time, and Siati's going to start streaming, and I don't want to overlap him. So if your question didn't get answered, feel free to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, and I will do my best to help you. In the meantime, thank you for coming out, and I will see you tomorrow, Monday, at 8 p.m. for my Monday evening stream. Meanwhile, go over to Siati's stream, and I will see you there. Bye, everybody.